And today is the day that I intend to finish chapter 20. It is a very big chapter with a lot of subtopics. So if we don't finish everything, I may have a few items left over into next week, into Sunday. We'll see how it goes. And then it continues on. So a couple of things to note further down in the schedule. You're going to see that April 20th, for instance, we're going to be having a Dao conference. It's a Dao conference intended for initiates, and therefore there's not going to be an online meeting. So we will have a weekend off come April 20th. And before that, and less well defined, is the shrine opening at the Ekata Center. That's Sifu Ed's place out in Santa Clarita Valley. It's close to Six Flags Magic Mountain. For those of you who are in Southern California, you probably know where that is. So we haven't set a date yet. We have not confirmed a date for the shrine opening. That facility is open, will be open for business, but the shrine opening itself, it depends on some factors coming together, so we're still planning that out. I am tentatively looking at April 6th as the shrine opening date. So whichever date it turns out to be, I will be going there, and I will be providing a couple of talks at the Ekata Center. The one talk is going to be an introductory talk on the Tao, and that one is open to everybody. It's something that makes no assumptions about anyone's previous level of familiarity with the Tao. I'll talk about what that is. I will also talk about, for the initiates, I will talk about preparing for what's to come as they go through the Tao request ritual to receive the Tao. The second talk that I will do there is going to be in their shrine room, and it's going to be for people who have gone through the initiation only, and it will be focusing on the three treasures. It's just a time for us to get together and talk about how these three treasures can help you and how we can practice, how practice makes perfect. So through repetitive practice, we will become more fluent, if you will, with the usage, easier with the usage of the three treasures. So I will keep everyone posted as far as when we set that date, when we confirm that date. In the meantime, I put the logo of the Ekata Center there approximately around April 6th, because that's a tentative date. You can tell from just looking at the logo, it's a melding of several principles that we talk about all the time in the Tao. So the overall design evokes the yin and yang symbol it is intended to. In the middle of it, you'll see the symbol for this particular spiritual tradition of the Tao, a tradition that focuses on the Tao itself, focuses on the self, the true self, and cultivation. So those are extremely important to Sifu Ed, and therefore he wants it right in the center of his logo. Outside of the symbol, you will see arrows. And the arrows are a depiction that there's motion, there's movement, there's dynamism. So the yin and yang symbol is the same way, although the yin and yang symbol usually doesn't come with a couple of arrows to tell you that, hey, I'm moving, right? So here, he wants to make that very explicit. You've got a couple of arrows there pointing to a clockwise rotation. So the idea is that the yin and yang symbol and this logo here, it never really stops spinning in place. It is always moving because everything in the cosmos is always changing. Everything is constantly changing. The same is true in your life. If you find yourself to be in a difficult situation right now, or if perhaps your current situation is less than perfect, you just want to manage the change away from that situation into something better. So one thing for sure, it's definitely going to change. The question is, how is it going to change? Is it going to change into something that you don't like, or something that you like a whole lot better than the present? Well, that's up to you. That's up to you to manage that. So the Tao is all about the skill in changing, managing the change, writing it out. So sometimes, just one more thing about that, sometimes the change can be difficult. So for Sifu Ed, what he has right now is the realization of a dream that he's had for more than 10 years. So from the beginning to the present day, this is something that he's been working on for that length of time. Now, the dream is coming true, but it is not without its challenges. There's a lot of things to look after. There's a lot of stress factors for him. So it is, that's the way it can be for change. So what happens is that, Master William gave him a little talk on the nature of the change, which you can also think of as metamorphosis, a profound change in the self that you become. You literally become a new being, a new person. You literally become someone else. So the symbolism for that in the Tao is and has always been the butterfly. And that's because, as you guys all, as I'm sure everyone is aware, the pupa goes through the metamorphosis and eventually emerges from the chrysalis to become this beautiful butterfly spreading its wings. Now, that process is anything but easy. So it literally has to struggle its way out of the chrysalis. So if you observe this process going on and out of compassion, you think to yourself, well, I'm going to make it easier for you, poor little butterfly. I'm going to get me a pair of scissors and I'll cut that open for you. Okay. What you've done is that you have interfered with the natural process, and you've also taken away the challenge. So without that challenge, the wings of the butterfly cannot develop properly. So it can exit out of the chrysalis, but then it's hopping around with improperly developed wings. It can't fly. So it is necessary to go through the challenge of emergence in order to soar. Okay, now that's extremely important in the Tao, and furthermore, Tao sages will be very specific in telling you that there's going to be times when you are reaching for a worthwhile goal that you are tested to the limit. You may be pushed to the emotional boundaries of what you feel you can withstand. You are going to be so physically exhausted you feel like you cannot take another step. But that's all part of the process, and that process is metamorphosis. Okay, so I wanted to mention that before we continue on. So let's take a look at where we are. We have reached 11:30, a little bit over. I'm going to park it on the next page, which is our continuation of chapter 20. So last time we did a whole bunch of stuff. We've divided it up. We did some interpretation. So this time we're going to take it all the way to the end, finish the interpretation for the entire chapter. So when we come back, that's exactly what we'll start doing. The time is now 11:32. Let's take 5 minutes. And when we come back, ought to be 11:37. Hey everyone, a couple more minutes, we'll get going. So before we get going, let me also show another slide here real quick. This is you probably recognize this as the page on Amazon.com for one of my books, The Tao of Daily Life. So the reason why I wanted to show this is because, as you can see, I've circled the 90 customer reviews. So then I thought, wow, I'm going to let people know, in case they're not aware, that they can write reviews. Maybe I can push it closer to 100. So there's a part of me, there's an immature part of me that says, it'll be so cool to get to 100. And then there's the Tao cultivating part of me that says, what is the difference between 90 and 100? Does it really mean anything? They're just numbers. And I have to admit, there are books out there. The important thing for me is that these books help people out. That sometimes it can make a huge difference in their lives. And there are books out there that may only have a few reviews and yet play an important role in someone's life. By the same token, there are also books out there that have hundreds of reviews. And as a matter, I can give you a very specific example without naming any names. There's in the Daoist genre, there is a book with many reviews that are achieved using just group, basically peer pressure tactics. So that's not, so the number of reviews is not an indication of how it's really helping people out. Nevertheless, I think just the simple act of awareness may allow some people, some people may say, as you are listening in, you may say that, well, I did not know that I can just, look at these reviews, and maybe some of the people have written stuff that I agree with, that they resonate with the experience that I have. So I want to offer that for what it's worth. Feedback from Fred: Amazon is out of stock on a couple of your books. I try to order them this morning. I guess that's a positive thing. It just means that business is brisk. And by the way, I want to dispel a notion that sometimes people have. I actually don't have a warehouse full of my books. I actually don't have any books. All of that is being handled by Amazon and the publisher directly on their own without any intervention from me. So I'm sure when they see a demand, they will take the appropriate action to get that book back in stock as soon as possible. I have seen them take very swift action before, so I am hoping that this time it will be no different. In the meantime, I want to take this opportunity also to thank everyone for your support. This has been just an amazing journey. I had no idea that it would get to this point, and it's all possible because of your support. So thank you. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about chapter 20. So last time, as you recall, what we did was that we did the first half of it. We divided up the chapter into two halves, where the top half seems like there's very little, just a few lines, and the bottom half seems like it's a lot more. So let's dive back into that. What I want to do is that I want to read the chapter from beginning to end one more time, and then we'll do the quick division with a couple of notes on the placement of the dividing line from previous Sunday, and then we'll go from there. So chapter 20, cease learning, no more worries, respectful response and scornful response. How much is the difference? Goodness and evil, how much do they differ? Well, what the people fear, I cannot be unafraid. So desolate, how limitless it is. The people are excited, as if enjoying a great feast, as if climbing up to the terrace in spring. I alone am quiet and uninvolved, like an infant not yet smiling, so weary, like having no place to return. The people all have surplus, while I alone seem lacking. I have the heart of a fool, indeed, so ignorant. Ordinary people are bright, I alone am muddled. Ordinary people are scrutinizing, I alone am obtuse. Such tranquility, like the ocean, such high wind, as if without limits. The people all have goals, and I alone am stubborn and lowly. I alone am different from them and value the nourishing mother. Okay, so how do we divide this up? Here's how we did it last time. Between 7 and 8. And the reason for that is because everything below that division from line 8 onward is all about specifics on how Laozi himself is different from the people that are all around him. Everything above that is more like an introductory section, which we went through last time. Now, I also mentioned previously that between the beginning section, the introductory section, and the section that starts the comparisons, the contrasts, we have 2 lines that are transition lines. So 6 and 7 both fit into that category. So everything above that line, from line 1 to 5, is all about the difference between compliments, respect, scorn, etc., good, evil, etc. So those 2 lines transition from the top half to the bottom half, and therefore it would be valid to place the line. When you want to divide it up into 2 sections, you could also say it's 1 to 5 and then the rest. So that's how that works. Now, we went through interpretations last time because this is one of those chapters where understanding can be very elusive, can be difficult, comprehension can be difficult unless you have some guidance with the interpretations. So this is a problem that is similar to some of the other chapters of the Tao Te Ching as well. The difference in the way that I approach this and chapters that are similar to it is that when I provide an interpretation, I will be sure to label it interpretation, which you see me do here in the slide at the very top. That's what it will say, interpretations. Interpretation means that there's an element here, there's a larger element here of my thoughts, my ideas, my notions, my concepts that I infuse into paraphrasing, rewording the original, okay? So it is important to me, not so important to other people, but it is important to me to make a distinction between translation and interpretation. With interpretation, I have a lot more leeway. With translation, not so much, because I want to depict the original faithfully. So a huge problem that I see is that oftentimes people will present interpretation but call it translation. However, I do recognize that this is not a huge concern for many people, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. So here, the interpretation for the very beginning parts of this chapter starts out saying, remember from previous chapters that we should let go of book knowledge. Life is something to be lived, not to be studied and worried over. So this underlines the point that the words in books constitute basically dead knowledge, whereas the experience that you absorb in life, going somewhere, see what it's like for yourself, actually walk around, interact with people, etc., that isn't dead knowledge. That's living experience. Okay, that's living, breathing, much more useful than dead knowledge. It is the difference between reading a travel brochure on Hawaii and actually being in Hawaii for a visit. The brochure, however colorful it is, however beautifully it has been created, will not be able to even come close to you actually being in Hawaii and seeing those sites for yourself. So, so this particular line, the very first line, is not so integrated with the rest of the chapter, but it's a continuation from previous chapters to remind everyone, hey, don't forget what we talked about. It's important. So every time Lao Tzu talks about something, we have to pay special attention because he usually doesn't repeat himself. So when he does, we know it's important. All right, so then the next, continuing on with the interpretation, this is where he starts to get into the topic about how he is different from the others. So he says, people stress over the respect or disrespect that others have for them but such things make little difference to me, Lao Tzu, because my focus is on internal validation, not external approval. So, in part, we especially, if you think about what happens in our society over the past few decades, it seems like human beings have not changed dramatically from the time of Lao Tzu. So think about the expression that we have here in North America. You dissing me? What does that mean? For those of you who are not native English speakers or don't speak English in North American context, to diss someone, to quote unquote, to diss someone, what it means, let me decrypt it for you. What it means is disrespect. So if you are dissing someone, you are disrespecting someone. That's the sort of the urban slang, I suppose you can call it that. So people actually get in fights beginning with the usage of that word. You dissing me? Was that a diss? Was that a diss from you? Are you serious? Like that. And then a fight erupts. So putting a lot of emphasis on respect and disrespect is the beginning of the possibility for violence. And Lao Tzu says, well, I'm like the exact opposite, okay? It's much more important to me that I live up to my expectations for myself and the discipline that I have for myself. I make sure that my standard internally is far higher than what other people have for me, and therefore it matters more to me that I live up to my own expectations. So that's the very first part of it that we went through last time. Let's fly through the other interpretation as well. And people also stress who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong. And Lao Tzu says, well, I think a lot of that depends on which side of the fence you happen to be. Then, the tricky part, here's the pivot. This is the pivot where Lao Tzu takes a moment to say that, well, I'm not trying to say that I am so different from humanity that I'm not even human anymore. Okay? Lao Tzu says, I'm not setting myself apart from humanity. I'm not immune to all the things that people regard as dangerous or harmful. If you cut me, I'm going to bleed, is what he's saying. In that respect, I'm only human, just like everyone else. So this is the pivot that sets it up for the larger point, which is that aside from this physical aspect of it, you cut me and I bleed, aside from that, I think in a different way, I act in a different way, I react and observe in different ways. I am very different from the way most people are. So that sets it up. So other than the physical aspects of life and basic issues like survival, I am quite different from most people. See things differently, think about things differently. Sometimes the difference is so huge, it's like a desolate, limitless desert. For example, and then he goes into the second part, which is the topic for today. So that was my quick recap. Let's continue on. Now, I broke this part down into multiple slides before to show you guys the progression to go from one to the other. So in the interest of getting to the meat of what we want to talk about today quickly, I've decided to consolidate all of them into one slide. But let me take you through it. First, you can tell that I'm dividing up the second part into multiple subsections. Each section highlights a difference between other people and Lao Tzu, and we'll talk about exactly what those are. So one way you can tell, let's just say we don't have the red lines in there that make it easy to see where the subsections are. One way you can tell is by looking at the usage. So if you look at the dark blue that I have in there to highlight some text, just look at the English for a while, you're going to see the people. And then down below, the people again, that's on line 14. And then down below, on line 17, ordinary people. And then 19, ordinary people again. And then further down, line 23, the people again. So those will all track with the beginning of a section that highlights the difference. So basically the structure, you can tell the structure is that Lao Tzu says people are this particular way, and then he'll say, I am a particular way, which is different from them. And where Lao Tzu talks about himself, I put that down in red. So if you look at the English part of it, you're going to see on line 11, the I alone. And then 15, I alone again. 18, I alone. 20, I alone. 24, I alone. And then 25, I alone. So for most of them, you'll notice that the I alone follows the people or ordinary people. So that's what gives you a clue about the structure. So the people and ordinary people are translated differently. As I mentioned last time, it's because your original Chinese is a little bit different. So you'll notice that the people is all matching the exact two characters in the Chinese part, you know, on line 8, 14, and then skipping down 23. Those are all the same two characters. Ordinary people translated that way because they match the two characters on 17 and 19. Those are the exact same characters, and they're slightly different from the other expressions. So it's the difference between the people, as in the masses, and then to talk about ordinary people, like, you know, this is one way to say most people, because there are going to be people out there who are extraordinary. Okay, so that's the structure of it. Now let's break it down further and talk about each one of those on its own. So we're really diving into it in detail now. So we're going to go into interpretation mode once again. So what I have done is that I've isolated that first section of comparison, and then what I've done is that I highlighted some characters which are descriptions of how most people react, how most people think, how they are, and then I go into details down below. So let's take them one by one. So as you have already seen, the first two characters are simply the people. And then we have repetition of two characters. Okay, so whenever you repeat two characters in Chinese, it is a sign of emphasis. So, you know, a valid way to translate this would be something like, you know, very excited, extremely excited. So here, the interpretation that I offer is excitable, restless, noisy. So most people are like that. They look for sights and sounds. And they look at that as fun. So if you want a real life example, a mental imagery that I would offer to you would be the Strip in Las Vegas. You know, walking up and down the Strip in Las Vegas, you see definitely the sights and sounds. You see, you know, all these shiny neon signs, giant plasma screens, advertising absolutely everything, you know, tempting you to, you know, go in for a visit, etc. Okay, so that's how people are. And then what? Okay, now I want to point out that line 9 and 10 start out with the same character. So that character can be translated with several possibilities. Similar to, like, as if. So the second character here in line 9 means enjoy, and then we have two characters here that means great feast. So people are so excitable, so noisy, so restless, as if they are enjoying a great feast. Enjoying a great feast here is just about one particular sensation, that's taste. And, you know, eating food, satiation, it is generalized to talk about physical pleasures, all physical pleasures. So that would include, you know, drinking wine, drinking liquor, stuff like that. Anything that's related to the physical senses, that's what people are into. People want to enjoy life when they say, I want to enjoy the good life, they're thinking about the great feast. When a Dao cultivator thinks about enjoy the good life, the Dao cultivator is thinking about a simple life with a basic sense of joy. So very different conceptions. Okay, then we have another line here that says, as if, like, similar to, and then we have a character here that means spring, and then a character here that means to climb, to ascend, and then platform or terrace. So in ancient China, this was a popular activity, is to go with a group, a group outing and climb up, in springtime to a terrace, up in a mountain. So a couple of things about that. Number one, it's a socializing opportunity where you can talk to other people. And number two is that as you are making the climb, you are also enjoying the view. So, a while ago I mentioned that the Akata Center was close to Six Flags Magic Mountain. Well, that's amusement rides. So in ancient China, no roller coaster, but there is that climb to the terrace. So for them, that was the idea of a thrill. So overall, think about this line as depicting a social activity undertaken together. That's number one. Number two, a thrill, a sensory thrill to see the sights. And there's also interpretation that says people are climbing to the terrace together. That's symbolic of climbing the social ladder where people are competing with one another to see who can get there faster. Oh, you've taken 2 steps, I will take 3 steps. Climbing over one another, so to speak. So people are into that. And Lao Tzu is going to say, well, I am not as into it as they are. So another note about climbing up to a terrace and enjoying the view is that, there's for another sage, Zhuangzi, he had written previously about what happens when the great painter flies high up in the sky. And the painter is looking down at the ground and sees that at ground level, everything's all blurry. So there's going to be people, Chinese-speaking people who look at that and say that, well, Zhuangzi must have been an astronaut to be able to see from a great height, because we know that the ancient China, they didn't have airplanes, but perhaps he got, taken up in a UFO. So this is sort of the ancient astronaut idea. So I'll be the first to say that, no, the ancient Chinese knew what it was like to look down from a great height simply by climbing a mountain. Okay, so moving on. So you can see, so I've divided this up into how most people are. They are excitable, they are into physical pleasures, and they want socializing activity, and they want thrills. Now, in the socializing activity, there's actually plenty more to talk about there, which I will get into in just a moment. Now, let's talk about Lao Tzu. In the subsequent lines, from 11, 12, 13, he'll talk about how he prefers quietness instead of parties. So the reference to parties here will be the excitable, noisy part, will be the social activity or climbing the terrace. Okay, that's one way to depict this, this party atmosphere. And Lao Tzu prefers simple pleasures instead of sensory feasts. So for Lao Tzu, it's the simple things in life that bring him joy, that are delightful, that, he takes. So the joy that he experiences with the simple things in life is not like these sensory thrills that come and go, that are transient. So the joy that's experienced by Lao Tzu and Dao cultivators is a lasting sense of joy that is always there in the background. So quite different. But that is what Lao Tzu prefers. And lastly, Lao Tzu prefers quality instead of quantity. What do I mean by that? Well, most people love to go to these very crowded places where other people are also going to, and people think about the fact people like to, for instance, think about themselves as being very popular, having many, many friends. I got so many friends that I lost count. So think about how, several years ago when Facebook was trending up, people were getting into Facebook and friending people all over the place. Okay, so it's like, hey, how many friends do you have? What? Only 92? Check it out. I have 259. So who are all these people that are your friends? Well, chances are excellent that you don't really know every single one of them. When people that was, friending others indiscriminately, they ended up with a lot of people they didn't actually know. But we're just participating in the friending exercise. Now, Lao Tzu is going to be the one to say that, well, it's not the quantity of how many people you know. It's the quality of the few friendships that you maintain throughout your entire lifetime. Who are the people, which are the relationships that enrich you as a person, enrich your life, and which are the relationships that don't really contribute anything to it. Okay? Those will be the meaningless relationships that most people are into. But those are the relationships that a Dao cultivator would prune away. So quality instead of quantity. And one more thing that is the combination of all these to note is that Lao Tzu notices that most people tend to depend on others as sort of like amateur therapists, in that they depend on others to approve of what they're doing, or they complain to others hoping to find some sort of encouragement. When people get together, one example would be someone talking about, my boyfriend is treating me badly, and her friends may be saying, girlfriend, kick him to the curb. That's another familiar expression. So Lao Tzu is saying that, well, you need to take a look carefully at what is enriching your life and what is not. So let's delve into that more deeply. Like I said, there's a big topic here. So then the question is, so what you're saying seems to be that most people are social animals, but then Lao Tzu seems to be totally against that. He seems to be antisocial. So what I want to get everyone to think about is that, well, Lao Tzu isn't necessarily antisocial. What he is someone who looks at the process with clarity of perception and sees what is actually going on. What do I mean by that? Let's follow this slide. So ask yourselves, what usually happens when people gather? What actually happens? Are they inspiring one another for greater growth spiritually? Usually not. What they're doing instead, number one, gossip. So we then have to find out, well, what is the utility of gossip? How does it contribute to your life or enrich your life? And the answer is, well, not a whole lot. Next time you gather together with your friends, you can be pretty much assured there's going to be a fresh batch of gossip. And the gossip that you had before was only that. It didn't change anything. It did not affect anyone's life. It was just idle gossip. Did you hear the one about so-and-so? And another thing that you can be sure of is that as you engage in gossip with other people, you yourself figure into gossip that other people engage in when you are not present. If I talk to people, hey, did you hear the one about John? I can't believe it. It's outrageous. Later on, they get together with John. Did you hear the one about Derek? Unbelievable. All right. So the second thing, and this is a big, big focus area for me: complaints, endless complaints. So this is what I sometimes call the dump truck. That when you get together with your friends, they dump their trash in front of you, basically asking you to, make them feel better. by giving them friendly advice. And when people get together, it seems as if they are taking turns to complain about different things. Sometimes it may be related to the spouse or the significant other. And sometimes it could be children related. You talk to any parents, chances are, sooner or later, they're going to start to complain about, oh, you know, the school that my child is attending, oh, we got this really awful teacher. Let me tell you about what she said the other day. It doesn't even make any sense. Just listen to this, you know, and then it goes on and on from there. Could be work related, and that would be like, you know, the boss, the coworker, you know, this person, that person, you know, at the office who's not carrying his or her own weight, stuff like that. Many complaints. So here's the thing to note. As you are in a group setting, talking to other people, number one, mentally step back and note when the complaint session starts, the kvetch session. It'll begin. Then watch what people actually do in that session. Here's what you may notice. As one person is complaining, the other person is nodding sympathetically, you know, oh yeah, she done you wrong, you know, just sort of attempting to make them feel better. But notice that they are not really paying attention. Mentally, they are queuing up their own complaints because they know that after a moment, it'll be their turn. Okay, so as they are, so it's the same when you complain to someone else. As you are complaining to them, you're gonna get reactions every now and then. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh wow, that's beyond belief. That is just that crosses the line. I'm telling you, that crosses the line. Okay, you got to do something about that. Okay, there are many set phrases that people always go to when they are playing the role of someone who listens to your complaints. At the same time, this is all very familiar and very well practiced. So at the time that they are looking very sympathetic and very sincere in listening to you, observe that they are actually queuing up their own complaints. They are mentally readying, they're putting the golf ball, they're teeing up 1, 2 for the drive. Okay, so this is sort of like a impromptu, informal therapy session that people do for one another. But the important difference is no one actually gets any better. So time after time, after you're done complaining, you can be absolutely certain that the next time you get together again, there's going to be more complaints. There's going to be more. Nothing will ever get resolved. Nothing, no benefit, no enrichment will ever be contributed to one another. So this is why, you know, there's a minister that is making a difference in producing he wrote a book called The Complaint-Free World, and he produces the complaint-free bracelets. So he's getting these out, hundreds of thousands of these bracelets out to people, and he encourages people to get into a practice that for several weeks, whenever they are complaining, that they have to take the bracelet off of one wrist and put it on the other wrist. Whichever wrist it happens to be on, they just change it. So that simple act serves as an interrupt for them to pay attention to what they're doing. Oh, I am complaining. I am being negative. And the goal is to live a complaint-free life for at least 21 days. 21 days is what causes a habit to form. And when people actually do that, they find that it has a magical effect on their lives. More energy, get more things done. All the negative energy that was expressing, that they used to express in kvetching, suddenly they can redirect that to something else that is far more useful. So that is the reason why Lao Tzu is so wary of the group setting. Because what actually happens? Well, a lot of gossip and many complaints. And there's also one more category. one-upmanship. And this has to do with the ego-driven name dropping or event dropping or showing off the, let me tell you what my boyfriend did for me, for Valentine's Day, he took me to so-and-so restaurant and we spent a romantic evening together. And what this person wants to hear is, wow, you have such an incredible boyfriend. Okay, so that's ego-driven. And there's also going to be, oh yeah, we went to the Bahamas for vacation. Oh yeah, I've been there too. Whatever you have, I have as well. Oh, I just bought a new car. Oh yeah, we bought a new car. Us too. What's your car? Oh, my car, this and that. People are constantly trying to compare themselves against one another. When they're not engaged in gossip or complaints, they are doing those comparisons. Who's got more? Who's got better? Possessions, vacations, boyfriends, girlfriends, wife, husband, kids. Yeah, my kids just won the honor roll, blah, blah, blah. Well, my kids got into this college. People love to compare. So that's what's happening in a group setting. So it isn't that Lao Tzu is antisocial, it's just that he sees all too clearly what is actually going on in a group setting. So you can just imagine that Lao Tzu, coming from the perspective of the Tao, would say that we all need to watch our ego, when we're interacting with others. A lot of times we're looking for others for approval. And speaking of that, speaking of seeking the external approval, I do have a real life story that I'd like to share with you. So a lot of you guys that have been listening to me know that when I was a teenager, I was quite the science fiction nerd, and this was before science fiction nerds became cool. So I was very uncool. But I used to read up a lot on these science fiction novels, and I really idolized these science fiction authors. And I was too poor to afford attending science fiction conventions. I always hoped that I could one day have the ability to do that. So it was with much surprise that I read about the experience of some of these science fiction authors when they say, "Oh, I want to avoid those science fiction conventions because of all the things that happened." So for them, some of them have realized that it's basically an ego fest for pleasing their ego. When they're surrounded by a whole bunch of fans who tell them how great they are, who compliment them, on everything. So when I read this particular account, it was from an author by the name of Barry Longyear. So he's not well known like the Isaac Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke, etc. People who are known outside of the science fiction circles, but he was pretty well known within the science fiction circles that he had a reputation. So he was invited to these to many conventions. So in one particular event in a convention, these writers get invited. They all become what they call guests of honor. So when you go there, basically the convention pays your way. The convention organizing committee, they pay for your trip there, they pay for your hotel stay, they invite you to do a speech, a guest of honor speech, and then there's book signing opportunities. So it's really a great deal for these science fiction authors. So Barry Longyear went to one of these conventions, and he was met by cordial staff from the organizing committee. So they met with him, they gave him the badge that identified him as a guest of honor, and they showed him to his room, which was very well appointed, so he was very happy about that. And usually, writing is a very lonely occupation. You go through days, weeks, months without real human interaction with a whole bunch of people. So this particular author felt that, wow, now at least I get to be among my fans. I will surprise and delight them with my mere presence. So next day in the morning, he got up early, and what he was thinking was that I am going to surprise my fans by having breakfast with them. So he went to the cafeteria of the hotel, and he saw that the staffer from the organizing committee that met with him the previous day was also having breakfast there, having early breakfast. So they greeted one another cordially, and then they sat down and had breakfast together. So they had a satisfactory breakfast, and then when they were just starting to put the forks, knives away, that's when people usually start chatting and usually start discussing the work. Oh, your novel. What are you working on now? Wow, that is so great. So he was expecting that. So he's thinking, now I will let them, including the campaign, including the organizing committee staffer, bask in my presence. So he sat back a little bit, he relaxed, he put on his author looks, the author airs, and prepared for his discourse on the craft of his writing. And the staff member from the organizing committee sat back also and said, so Barry, what have you done to rate one of these guest of honor badges? Then he realized that nobody there has any idea who he is. There was no recognition that, no fans was going to come up to him to say, Mr. Longyear, I'm a big fan of your book. Could you please sign this with me? Oh, your books have changed my life, etc. So suddenly, a rug got pulled out from under him, and he was disoriented for a while, and he finally regained his composure and said, oh, I wrote a few things here and there. That's how I got this guest of honor. So from that point on, he never forgot that experience, and he always, repeated that to his other author friends as a reminder that a lot of times what we think of our own worth can be far greater than what other people think. So got to keep that ego under control. So the group setting can contribute to the ego trip, and we can go to a group setting with expectations of the ego trip. So that's another danger that Lao Tzu sees very clearly. Okay, next. So let me highlight these two. So line 14, we start with the people, and then continuing on with the character that means all, and then a character for have, and then a character for surplus. So this is, you can tell, this is a very straightforward translation. Word for character, basically. The people all have surplus. They all have a lot. While I alone seem to have not enough, seem lacking. So the comparison that I talked about before, the imagery was how a lot of people have so much that they can't use the garage for the true intended purpose. So that's what Lao Tzu meant by having surplus. Having so much, having too much. Now, over here, this is a garage that you can actually use as a garage, i.e. for cars. So I think that there's actually too many things on the walls that you see here. However, in comparison to this, this is without a doubt a right step in the right direction. So the ideal for the Dao cultivator will be to look at all of these tools and figure out which ones are actually needed, which ones are not, and have it be even more minimalist than this. But this is an excellent start. It's certainly way better than what we have over here. So this is another topic on which regular people differ greatly from real cultivators of the Tao. So all cultivators of the Tao tend to be minimalist. They want to have as little as possible. They just what they need, maybe a little bit more, but certainly nowhere near the surplus that you see over here. So this is where I bring in another real life story from Joshua. This is Joshua Milburn. He's this gentleman is from Ohio. Grew up sort of the all-American boy and enjoyed a great deal of success as a young man. You know, in his 20s, he had already worked his way up the corporate ladder. He started working for a telecommunication corporation at the age of 18. Now, this is a pretty smart guy, so he also worked really hard. So Joshua rose up through the ranks very quickly. And by the time he was 23, he was already had already attained senior management level at that corporation. Now, to everyone else, this would be great. This would be fantastic. To him, it was just a recipe for unhappiness, because the price he had to pay to get to that point was basically 60-hour work weeks. So he would often work without a break, not take Saturday or Sunday off, but continuously every day of the week, and do that for months on end. That's the price he had to pay. He made a lot of money, he got a lot of praise, but he was stressed out and he was unhappy. So he was struggling with this issue, not knowing really what to do, and then there was a life-changing moment for him. There was something that happened that changed everything, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. In 2009, so we're talking 5 years ago, in 2009, Joshua's mother passed away. So it fell upon Joshua to basically set his mother's affairs into order. And he looked at his mother's belongings. His mother lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and that apartment was full of stuff. That apartment had a lot of surplus. This is because Joshua's mom loved to shop, loved to accumulate beautiful things, and she also had impeccable taste. This is a lady who could be an interior decorator if she wanted to be. Okay, so what she bought, she had, for instance, these beautiful antique furnitures. She had a lot of things that are not junk. You know, they're all new, they're all valuable, they're all very good things, and they all reminded Joshua of the mom, of his mother. So, like any good son, now the furnitures, most of the belongings were not useful to Joshua, but like any good son, he would figure out a way to store them, for later, in case later on he wants to look at a few items. And he was also planning to set aside a couple of things from his mother's belongings to decorate his own house as a subtle reminder, of his mom. So he began the packing process, and he started to ask about storage facilities. And he saw that his mom had 3 or 4 apartments worth of stuff in the one-bedroom apartment. So all told, it would have required storage space that would cost him about $120 a month. He would need to rent storage space for that. So he called U-Haul to rent a truck to take that stuff. Now, his mother lived in Florida and he lived in Ohio, so he would have had to make a pretty long trip. So just getting that truck beginning to end, that would have been like more than $1,000. So he did all these calculations, and that was the plan that he was going to follow. So he started to pack everything up. When he thought that he had packed everything up, he made a new discovery. Now, I feel that this story has particular importance for all of us for 2 reasons. One, a lot of us will be called upon to process the belongings of a loved one who is deceased. So we oftentimes will be put into Joshua's position. If so, that's one particular way that this story can be very relevant to us. Yet another angle on it is that you and I and everybody else we know, the day is going to come when we make the passage ourselves. And the stuff that we leave behind, all those things are going to have to be processed by someone else. So we can also put ourselves in Joshua's mother's position, not just Joshua. So it's two different ways. When that time comes, all the things that you value, all the things that you love, are they going to be worth anything to someone else? To the person that you want to leave it behind for? I know that people who have collected first editions, valuable books, hardcover, crafted books, that they will to the next generation. But the next generation has no interest in these books at all. So what they love and enjoy so much is not so loved or enjoyed by the person they give it to. Now back to the story, back to Joshua's story and Joshua's epiphany. So Joshua made a discovery. He thought that he had packed everything away. They're all neatly boxed away, stacked. Then he looked around to see if there was anything he missed. Then he realized that there was actually storage space that was underneath his mother's bed. Sometimes there's a crawl space below the bed where you can put stuff. So when he moved the bed aside, he could see some organized chaos down there. And among the items, there were 4 large boxes down there. They're all taped up. So, he got out they're marked 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. They just have numbers on it. So he got out, a knife, cut through the tape to open it up to see what was inside. And what he discovered was his own past. That is, what he did as a child, as a boy. When he was in elementary school, when he was in junior high, when he was in high school, all of his homework assignments, all of his tests, everything that he did as a student, his mother had carefully saved, put into these boxes, and taped them up. And that was because, of course, because she loved him, and she wanted to hold on to her son, parts of her son, even if it's her son's past. When Joshua saw this, that was when he had the epiphany. Because he could tell by the fact that he had to cut open the tape that ever since they were put away, his mother had never opened them up to access anything that was inside. And it was unnecessary. It was not necessary for his mother to really hold on to that, to have him as the son. Because they were very close. The relationship did not depend on her holding on to anything that he did. If she didn't have any of these items, they would still be just as close as they were before. She was holding on to his past the same way that he was now holding on to her past by boxing up her belongings to be put into a U-Haul truck, to be put into storage. He's doing the same thing now that his mother did, and it's equally unnecessary. That was the epiphany. At that moment, he went through the following thoughts. We're not our stuff. We're more than our possessions. The possessions are nothing, really. That's number one. Number two, our memories are not under our beds. Our memories are within us, not our things. They're not in things. They're in us. Number three, an item that is merely sentimental for us, like him wanting to remember his mom, can be useful for someone else. The antique furniture may not be terribly useful for Joshua, but may be useful for someone else. Number four, holding on to that weighs you down emotionally and mentally. If you want to remember, you can take pictures of those items. All pictures can be scanned. You don't actually need to hold on to anything physical. When you're able to do this, when you get to this point in your realization about your relationship with things, you'll learn to let go. And it's incredibly freeing. Okay? So this is what Lao Tzu would have advised, and this is the difference that Lao Tzu pointed out. Everybody wants to hold on to things. I recognize the importance of letting go. That's what Lao Tzu is saying. Okay, so there's a lot more to this chapter to talk about. A couple more slides, and then a summary. So we'll leave that for next time. There's also things that I want to provide to everyone as examples on how to answer those questions for summaries. We'll do that next time. For now, it's just a reiteration of the questions that I asked you guys before. So first, about the ego. What is the importance that you place on the good opinion of others? Remember the science fiction author. Remember his expectations of praise, ego stroking, having breakfast with other people. Remember that. And think about how much will be appropriate for yourself. Okay? And we talked about this previously. You know, what's good, what's bad? How do you see it? How does it depend on how you see it? Next time, I'll do a quick talk on being cautious yet carefree. People see that as contradictory. It's actually not. Then the question that I have for you before is, how about you? Lao Tzu says he's very different from the others. Are you different? In what ways are you different? And how exactly is Lao Tzu different? How would you describe that in your own words? Are you similar? Which aspects would you like to become more like Lao Tzu? And why? So, same questions that I have for you last time, same questions that I have for you this time. Next time, we'll review these questions and talk about different ways to answer them. Okay? So for now, I'm going to park it on the summary as we close the meeting for today. Everyone, please follow me. 起立。面向佛堂，持下三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持下各位点传是一鞠躬，结班一鞠躬。Thanks so much, everybody.